Ознакомление с...
Поехали.
Нет, подождите, у нас жюри-то нету, кто у нас будет оценивать?
Ну да, еще 3 минуты есть, давайте подождем, может.
Давайте подождем.
So, да.
Можно начинать?
Hello, everyone. My topic is WebGL. Let's go. And what is WebGL? WebGL is a browser API for creating 3D graphics on the web. And WebGL is based on OpenGL ES, which means for embedded systems like
Почетный заместитель председателя правления зама по хозчасти КСК. Зам шестого зама канцелярии диспетчера Есмагомедов Асылбек Жумабекович. Внимание всем родителям 10 Б.
Я один это слышал?
Сам аким города.
Нет, не один.
Аким, мэр города. Поэтому, чтобы дети были чистыми, поглаженными, идеально в белых рубашках.
Айнура, ты можешь замьютить вот у кого-то включен там ребенка?
Конечно, вам. Ну-ка повтори. Асыл текті туған, алаш кегін туған. Мои умнички.
Айнур?
Для награждения приглашается почетный заместитель председателя правления зама по хозчасти КСК Акиматов зам шестого зама.
Это что такое? Хакеры напали на нас?
Все, это было.
Кто? Понятно.
Ну, видимо, можно продолжать. Прошу прощения.
It's okay. So, WebGL is based on OpenGL ES, which means for embedded systems like smartphones or tablets. In general, for devices with restricted functionality. And
it's really nice, but I think it's not pro.
Could you repeat, please? Hello? Okay, so go next. For devices not as powerful as desktops or laptops. And some words about OpenGL. OpenGL is an API for rendering computer graphics, and it was released in 1992 by Silicon Graphics. Let's talk about WebGL in more detail. First of all, WebGL is a cross-platform technology, which means that the user has access to the same WebGL application from any device and any platform. For example, the same WebGL application can work correctly from Windows desktop and iOS smartphone. And the reason is that WebGL runs in a browser environment, and there is no difference which device is used. The main thing is to have a modern browser to support WebGL. And the second is that WebGL became available due to a new HTML5 tag, Canvas. And this tag acts like a bridge between a user and WebGL application. WebGL is extremely fast, and the reason is that it uses shaders and runs on a GPU level. It's known that GPU is so much faster than CPU when it comes when we talk about multiple and similar parallel calculations. So how does WebGL actually work? And first of all, we should talk about shaders. And the shader is a program in GLSL, OpenGL Shading Language, which performs on a GPU level. And GLSL is very similar to C language. In general, developer write some code in GLSL, and then these programs are executed by video card. And that's why WebGL applications are so fast. And there are two types of shaders in WebGL. The first one is vertex shader, and the second one is fragment shader. In OpenGL, for example, there are more than two types of shaders. Let's talk about vertex shader. As it comes, according to a name of this shader, it works with vertices, and it is used to create a skeleton or a frame of our 3D object, because every 3D object, 3D model, contains of vertices. The second one is fragment shader, and the fragment shader is used to make a material of our object to make 3D model more pretty for our eyes. And it works with the color of every pixel on the screen. About WebGL. WebGL is like a conveyor, which means that it performs different computations one after another to achieve the final goal. And let's talk about the pipeline of every WebGL application in general. So the first step is that we get raw data about vertices and colors. And this data is just, in simple words, numbers or digits. Then we pass the data through the vertex shader, and the vertex shader transform these data into something more sensitive, into information about vertices. And then vertex shader pass the data into the fragment shader. And the fragment shader just paints future pixels. And the final step, user can see rendered pixels on the screen. And pixels are filled the frame buffer. And the frame buffer is filled, this pipeline is executed for every frame. And that's why WebGL application must be as fast as it possible. And I want to say you what you can do with WebGL. And to be honest, WebGL is used everywhere in the web, on the web, where you need a 3D object. And I divided the whole sphere of using WebGL into separate sections. And now let's talk about them. The first one is online maps. Then goes medicine visuals. It is application where you can explore the whole human's body just sitting at home. Then different online shops. And it's very cool that nowadays user, a client, has access to grab and rotate the thing you want, he or she want to buy, zoom it in or out, and that sounds very great because user feel satisfaction after the interaction. Then goes CAD systems and planning systems. Today you can plan your future house just sitting at home in 10 minutes in a web browser. Then magazines and newspapers and development. And in conclusion, I want to say that WebGL brought very powerful computer graphics to the web. And in my opinion, that's very great that today developers are able to create really stunning and cool things. And I think that these things are change our world. So that's all. Thanks for attention.
Good work. I have a question.
Okay.
What's the main difference between OpenGL and WebGL?
So the main difference is that OpenGL application was developed to create desktop applications. And the WebGL is created to make browser environment applications, and that's the main difference between them. And WebGL is like a cutted version of OpenGL, something like this.
Cool. Молодец.
Any questions?
I have no any questions. Anybody?
So, anybody?
Anybody else?
Anybody else?
Я вижу, Анна, по-моему, появилась здесь у нас. Анна?
Ханна есть.
Ну, мне кажется, это она есть.
Возможно. Молодец.
Thank you. Have a nice day. And I'm gonna to quit, but I don't know how. So
Who is the next?
I am. My name is Elena Zabauyeva.
You're welcome, Elena. Can you share the screen and
Yes,
switch
okay.
on your video?
I hope you see me. And now I'm going to share my screen. Oh, I can't because demonstration another participant. Okay.
I see your face.
So, can you see my screen?
Так, у меня получилось, что лицо на скрине.
Нет, я вижу презентацию на экране и лицо Елены сверху.
Да, что-то у меня переключилось странно. Как же это сделать? Так. Елена, может быть, здесь... I made you host, но сейчас.
Ребята, все видят презентацию? Тут Айнур не видит.
Я вижу, просто она в меньшем экране, а лицо в большем экране получилось у меня.
Может быть, попробовать перешарить?
Давай.
Давайте попробуем перешарить.
Попробуй, пожалуйста. Да, сейчас отлично. Спасибо.
Okay. So, hi everyone. My topic today is Scrum, and let's start. You can find a lot of information of Scrum from many books. You can see how important it's for a great software development, and sometimes it seems to be that the process of job organization is more important than job. And our developers team happy with Scrum and request to use it to any project. But why? Why it's so popular? Obviously, Scrum is always about the team and for the team. But I'm sure that we can understand the essence of the Scrum methodology from your personal example and the value of this system for each individual. So today I will tell you about to start living with Scrum yourself without a team and how to get used to this rhythm so that when you are in the development team, you can easily join the system. So what is Scrum? Scrum is just a technique, a work organization system, and that's all. So simple. Life, as well as the development process, becomes a really confusing thing. And then all the methodologies like Scrum, Get Things Done, the seminars of Tony Robbins and self-organization marathons and others, all these ideas just try to simplify any process as if you have a simple and easy way before you. So let's investigate how we can use Scrum in our everyday life. Of course, I think that for 10 minutes of presentation, we will not have discuss all components and points of Scrum, but we just take a look at main. So let's get a concept closer to some components of the Scrum, and it will be sprints, stand-ups, board, of course, graphical representation, backlogs, and the role of Scrum Master. Okay, so let's start with sprint. Sprint usually lasts 2 weeks. Sprint starts with planning. So this means that you need to choose the term for which you want to achieve something. At this diagram, you can see for the main part. Let's imagine a sprint cycle for your personal sprint. For example, you want to feel happy in 2 weeks. Okay, and you have 5 tasks to achieve this goal. Walk along the river, eat ice cream, sleep, see the family, and schedule the trip, for example. Okay, sprint planning, daily Scrum. Daily Scrum, you just check every day how many steps you have already done. And we will talk about it later. Sprint review. In big company, the summary review of the results clearly demonstrates the complexity of the work of the entire team, designers, developers, and product owners. But for yourself, you can simply analyze what you have managed to reach the end of the sprint. And finally, on sprint retro, have you evaluated all your goals? Are you really happy? What did you do well? And it advanced you on your way. And where are you mistaken? And how to avoid repetition of these mistakes. So let's move to stand-ups. Oh, stand-ups. Good example of these everyday meetings, daily Scrum, usually of course, is meeting agenda of Atlassian company. I hope you see 3 simple questions. All the same questions you can use with your personal Scrum. And it's really very, very useful. And sometimes to stop and take a look at the whole process. Sometimes you can find very interesting and unexpected ways to solve tasks and problems. And the next component is board, graphical representation. It's just the columns, customize for yourself. The project usually has to do, in progress, code review, or ready to verify, and done. Graphic representation is one of the most important. All under control. You don't need to think about refills, what to do when you start. On the one hand, there is no choice, and really it's good. You are moving strictly on the board in accordance with the priorities. On the other hand, you have a place for maneuvers, and you can easily erase the appropriate tasks of the backlog. So let's turn to backlog. Backlog is a list of items, and it's drawn up based on the roadmap and the requirements in it. The most important task, of course, located at the beginning of the product backlog, so that the team understands what work should be done first. Scrum Master is a very important person in team, and he knows in any time who can take different feature or bugs. He knows your backlog. Sometimes he knows you better than yourself. And of course, it's a person with high level soft skill. He's cut out to be a leader. But who? Maybe the best Scrum Master for yourself. Of course, only you now better father how you can work not more hardly, but more effectively, and maybe to become more happy. So Scrum is the way to organize development, or maybe all your everyday life. So that's all from my side, and I hope that this 10 minutes will do good.
Good work. Nice presentation. I have a question. Do you know what is a Gantt diagram?
I heard about it, but I'm not learned.
Actually, I do. Me too. It's just our team lead use Gantt diagram, but I don't know what is it.
In my team, we don't use it. So when I prepared my presentation, I read a lot of information, and there is this item, but I'm not learned.
Отлично. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Good work. Anybody have questions? Похоже, ни у кого нет вопросов. Who is the next? Да, все, спасибо, молодец.
I'm gonna share my screen now.
Екатерина Петрова.
Yes, it's me. Can you see me and my screen?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So I can start, right?
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hello. In today's presentation, we are going to discuss such an important topic as top 10 OWASP vulnerabilities. At first, I will give you an overview on what is OWASP top 10, and then we will discuss each security threat and the ways of its remediation. So what is OWASP? OWASP stands for the Open Web Application Security Project. It's an online community that produces articles, methodologies, documentation, tools, and technologies in the field of web application security. And what is OWASP Top 10? This is the list of 10 most common application vulnerabilities. It also shows their risks, impacts, and countermeasures, updated every 3 to 4 years. The last OWASP vulnerabilities list was released in 2017. Here in the picture, you can see the whole list of the most severe security risks by OWASP. And now we will see each of them and the ways of its mitigation in more. So let's dive into this and start with the first vulnerability, which is injection. Injection occurs when an attacker exploits insecure code to insert their own code into a program. Because the program is unable to determine inserted in this way from its own, attackers are able to use injection attacks to access secure areas and confidential information as though they are trusted users. Injection attacks can be prevented by validating and sanitizer user-submitted data. Validation means rejecting suspicious-looking data, while sanitation refers to cleaning the suspicious-looking parts of the data. In addition, a database admin can set controls to minimize amount of information an injection attack can expose. Moving to our next vulnerability, which is broken authentication. When applications incorrectly execute the functions related to session management or user authentication, intruders may be able to compromise passwords, security keys, or session tokens, and permanently or temporarily assume the identities and permissions of other users. This vulnerability poses a grave threat to the security of the application and the resources it accesses, and can also severely compromise other assets connected to the same network. The best practice to mitigate broken authentication vulnerabilities are implement multi-factor authentication, do not deploy with default credentials, especially for users with admin privileges, enforce strong passwords, carefully monitor failed login attempts, and of course, use a secure session manager that generates random time-limited session IDs. Now we move to the sensitive data exposure. Sensitive data is any information that's meant to be protected against unauthorized access. Data exposure happens when data is left unencrypted in a server accessible to anyone. Sensitive data are often exposed when configuration details for system and applications are left unsecured online. To mitigate sensitive data exposure, you should identify sensitive data and apply appropriate security controls. You shouldn't store sensitive data until it's absolutely needed. You should encrypt all sensitive data at rest using strong encryption algorithm protocols and keys. Encrypt data in transit using secure protocols like TLC, HTTP, and HSTS, and of course disable caching for sensitive data. Another threat we are going to discuss is XML external entities. If a web application uses a vulnerable component processing XML, attackers can upload XML or include hostile content, commands, or code within an XML document. To mitigate such type of attack, just use simpler data formats like JSON, for example. Keep XML processors and libraries patched and upgraded. Avoid the serialization of potentially sensitive data, and validate XML using XCD or similar validation. Another threat is broken access control. Broken access control means that attackers can gain access to user accounts and act as users or administrators, and that regular users can gain unintended privileged functions. Broken access control vulnerability can be addressed in a number of ways. For example, you can adopt a least privileged approach so that each role is granted the lowest level of access required to perform its tasks. You can delete accounts that are no longer needed or active. You can audit the activity on servers and websites so that you are aware of who is doing what and when. And if there are multiple access points, you should disable ones that are not required at the moment. The sixth threat is security misconfiguration. Security misconfiguration is simply defined as failing to implement all the security controls for a server or web application, or implementing the security controls but doing it with some errors. Misconfiguration normally happens when a system or a database administrator or developer doesn't properly configure the security framework of an application, website, desktop, or server, leading to dangerous open pathways for hackers. If you are a developer and you don't want to get 2 a.m. call and learn that your database was compromised, you'd better to take assistance, such as remove unused code features, as well as unnecessary documentation, frameworks, and samples. You should segment application architecture and automate the effectiveness of web environment configurations and settings. The next one is cross-site scripting. These flows occur when an application includes untrusted data in a web page. With XSX flows, attackers can execute scripts in the victim's browser. This can result in hijacked user sessions, defaced websites, or redirecting the user to a malicious site. To avoid this, you should educate app and website developers in coding best practice, such as proper HTML and JavaScript escaping and decoding techniques, implement code vulnerability testing at the design and development phases, and scan code in production environments as well. You also should take a zero trust approach to user input data and separate active browser content from unvalidated data. The next one is insecure deserialization. It's not easy one, so for better understanding, let's figure out what is serialization and deserialization. Serialization is a process of converting complex data structures, such as objects and their fields, into a flatter format that can be sent and received as a sequential stream of bytes. And deserialization is the process of restoring this byte stream to a fully functional replica of the original object in the exact state as it was serialized. Unsafe deserialization flows can be introduced when languages and frameworks allow untrusted serialized data to be expanded into an object, often when web applications are communicating user or saving application state. The most effective defense against insecure deserialization is not to accept serialized objects from unknown or untrusted sources. One more vulnerability is using components with known vulnerabilities. Modern distributed web applications often incorporate open source components such as libraries and frameworks. Any component with a known vulnerability becomes a weak link that can impact the security of the entire application. So what is the most effective defense against this problem? It's just scanning of all code components for known vulnerabilities and deploying a patch or other remedy as quickly as possible when a vulnerability is detected. And the last but not least is insufficient logging and monitoring. Many web applications are not taking enough steps to detect data breaches, and the average discovery time for a breach is around 200 days after it has happened. This gives attacker a lot of time to cause damage before there is any response. So OWASP recommends that web developers should implement logging and monitoring, as well as incident response plans to ensure that they are made aware of attacks on their applications. And this is all vulnerabilities I wanted to tell you about. Now I'm ready to answer your questions if you have any.
Good work.
Thank you.
But first, I have a question. Who should make these protections?
It depends on the type of vulnerability. There are vulnerabilities such as cross-site scripting, and this problem should be eliminated by front-end developers. For example, injection should be eliminated by back-end developer. So it depends on the threat. And sometimes there should be people who specially trained for this work, and they look only after security. This is their job.
Usually DevOps makes this.
Yes.
Who configure the system?
Usually it's us developers.
Yes, that's right. Good work.
Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Anybody have a question? Has anybody questions? No questions. Good.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Good work. Next. Alina Strukova.
Yes, I'm here. Good evening.
Good evening. Please share the screen.
Okay, 1 second, please. I think
It's ongoing. Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. My name is Alina. And are you hearing me? Oh.
Yes, sound is good.
Okay. My name is Alina, and I would like to tell about Vue.js. Now we can't imagine our life without web development, and it's no secret that JavaScript is the soul of the site, which makes it interactive and lively. For the development of full-fledged websites and applications, developers often use frameworks. Frameworks are special libraries that simplify the task of developers, and these are tools for building dynamic web, mobile, or desktop applications in JavaScript. In the vast majority of cases, frameworks are used to write single-page applications. One of the greatest and most popular framework is Vue. Vue is a progressive framework for building user interfaces. Unlike other monolithic frameworks, Vue is designed from the ground up to be incrementally adaptable. The core library is focused on the Vue layer only and is easy to pick up and integrate with other libraries or existing projects. On the other hand, Vue is also perfectly capable of powering sophisticated single-page applications when used in combination with modern tooling and supporting libraries. In that way, Vue is an approachable, versatile, and performant framework that helps you create a more maintainable and testable code base. Okay, in 2013, Google employee Ivan Yu, working on one of the projects, came to the conclusion that there are no ready-made solutions for rapid prototyping, and he began developing Vue.js, which, while keeping it simple, turned out to be suitable not only for prototyping, but also for full-fledged development. Okay. The last release has absorbed more than 2 years of development effort. All the code has been rewritten to a more efficient TypeScript, which gives advantages in agile development. If we speak about installation of Vue.js, the JS file is attached with the script tag on the page, and Vue will be registered as a global variable. You can use the latest version to create prototypes or for training purposes. And for production, it's recommended linking to a specific version number and build. What about NPM? It's the recommended installation method for building large-scale applications with Vue. Vue provides an official command line interface for quickly creating good single-page applications. In the table, you can see explanation of different builds. For example, full means builds that contain both the compiler and the runtime. And runtime is code that is responsible for creating Vue instances, rendering, and patching the DOM. Okay, when we have installed Vue and figure out the technical features, we can start working. I think it's a good idea to tell about a couple key concepts that make Vue so useful. At first, I want to note that there is a system at the core of Vue.js that allows you to declaratively display data in the DOM and using simple templates. But thanks to framework Vue, the data and the DOM are now linked and everything is now reactive. There is no direct interaction with HTML there. In addition to text interpolation, we can also bind elements attributes like this. The vbind attribute you see. I'm sorry, bind. The vbind attribute you're seeing is called a directive. Directives are prefixed with v. They apply a special reactive behavior to the rendered DOM. It's basically saying keep this element's title attribute up to date with the message property on the view instance. Secondly, it should be noted that controlling the presence of an element in the DOM is also quite simple. This example demonstrates that we can bind data not only to text and attributes, but also the structure of the DOM. Moreover, Vue also provides a powerful transition effects system that can automatically apply transition effects when elements are dated removed by Vue. And if we app scene false in the console, the message now you see me will disappear. Next, I will tell about handling user input. To let users interact with your app, we can use the beyond directive to attach event listeners that invoke methods on our Vue instances. Pay attention that in these methods, we update the state of our app without touching the DOM, because all DOM manipulations are handled by Vue, and the code you write is focused on the underlying logic. The result you can see on this slide. An important concept of Vue.js is components. This abstraction allows you to build large applications from small pieces. They are reusable objects. Almost any interface can be represented as a component tree. In Vue, a component is essentially a Vue instance with predefined options. Registering a component in Vue is straightforward, and you can see the method on the slide. In large applications, it is necessary to divide the whole app into small pieces, into components, to make development manageable. And we might even use single file Vue components which contain their own HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. If we speak about pros and cons, I should compare Vue with other with other frameworks, especially with competitors. For example, React and Vue share many similarities. For example, they both utilize a virtual DOM, provide reactive and composable Vue components, maintain focus in the core library with concerns and such as routing and global stage management handled by companion libraries. But React outshines Vue, for example, in the richness of their ecosystem and abundance of their custom renderers. Let's talk about some differences. Vue.js uses HTML, JS, and CSS separately, and in React.js, absolutely everything in JavaScript. HTML and CSS are part of JavaScript. Both frameworks are easy to use, but React needs Webpack to build. React is more popular than Vue.js, but in the future, Vue can become more widely used than React and Angular. Vue.js is similar to Angular in many ways. Directives such as v-if and v4 are almost identical to other in Angular, and they both have a command line interface for installing and creating a project. But getting started with Angular will be more difficult for beginners. Vue is much less opinionated than Angular, but Vue.js file size is much lighter than the Angular file size. And Vue.js can be easily combined with any other large projects. And in conclusion, Vue.js is a progressive JavaScript framework that focuses on building user interfaces. It's very small and lightweight compared to other more complex front-end frameworks. Very simple to use and easy to get started. It's important to know that it can do anything with the user interface. It doesn't care about the model or database. It was designed from the ground up to be incrementally adaptable. This makes it very easy to integrate into an existing projects. And at the same time, it's strong enough to build powerful single-page applications. That's all from my side. Thank you for attention.
Good work.
Thank you. Have you got any questions?
Anybody? Okay, I'll ask one. How do you think why Vue is more popular in Europe than in Russia?
I think Russian developers and programmers work on large projects, and Vue.js is mostly used in little projects, and that's why Vue is not very popular in Russia and is popular in Europe, because European developers and European businessmen they do little projects, and but Russian developers work on large projects.
I don't know, maybe. Anyway, nice work.
Thank you.
Next. Who is
I'm ready.
Oleg Conan.
Yes.
You're welcome. Share the screen, please.
Okay.
Canvas API on MDN. Okay.
My theme is Canvas. That's a very interesting technology. Information you can find on MDN. And first of all, we should know what it is used for. We can use Canvas for drawing graphics, for animations, for game graphics, for data visualization, for photo manipulation. And for example, we use it in our task photo filter and for real-time video processing. When is it used? To answer this question, we should know what we can use simple HTML elements like divisions, images. It is easy to use, but it has some problems with efficiency. We can also use SVG. It's good for high fidelity and large graphics, but it has the same problems as HTML elements. We can use HTML5 canvas. It is fast and flexible. It uses hardware acceleration, so it's better for complex graphics, but it less abstraction, so it's more complicated to use Canvas. How to use? We should create a Canvas element in HTML, and then we can use it in JavaScript. It has two properties, width and height, but we can also use HTML element properties. And these properties, as you can see in the picture, has default values 300 for width and 150 for height. And we can use these properties like coordinates of our canvas. It has 5 methods: get context, to data URL, to blob, capture stream, and transfer control to off-screen. And let's figure it out how to use it. Context, it's the main useful method. And if we pass a parameter to D, we should get canvas rendering context with which we can do manipulations. We can draw shapes such as rectangles, paths, lines, move our points to any part of our canvas. We can draw arcs, use method arc to draw paths like this, and use Bezier and quadratic curves. We can also use paths to the objects. It's a good thing. We can save our path and then use it in any part of our code. And we can also use SVG path in this object. We can also change styles and colors. For example, to change color, we should use property fill style or stroke style. And we can also use gradient and patterns. But first of all, we should create this gradient or create pattern. And we can change global alpha if we would like to use alpha channel for every shape. We can change line width, line cap, line join, mid limit, set line dash using an array, and set dash of set and use shadows as we use it in CSS. We can also draw text. Default parameters for text is 10 pixel size and a font sans serif. And we can also align text, change baseline, change direction of text. And this is an example how we can use text in Canvas. We can also use images. If we pass 3 parameters, we can get a picture in whole. If we pass 5 parameters, we can scale image. And if we pass 9 parameters, we can slice in image. And we can also change smooth. As you can see in this picture on the left side, we picture with smoothing, and on the right side without it. We can also transform our shapes, but before it, we should know that we can save our settings and restore it from the stack. And we can translate shapes, rotate it, scale, and do all of these manipulations using one method, transform. We can also use compositing and clipping. Default type for compositing is source over when our shape is under another shapes, and more types you can find on MDN. There are very many of them. And we can also clip path and then fill shapes on this clip, for example, like this star. We can also use animations, but we should know that animation uses frames that change each other during period of time. So we should clear the canvas, then save canvas state, then draw animations shapes, and then restore it restore canvas state. And to set time for changing frames, so we can use set interval, set timeout, and request animation frame. But request animation frame is smoother and more efficient, so it is better. And we can city radius, and with a function draw that draw a ball in the canvas, and then I created a function draw that change frames. First of all, it clear rectangle, then draw the ball. Then I check if the ball is on the canvas or outside of it, and then I add velocity to initial position, and then I run this animation, and I got this animation. And we can manipulate with the pixels. To do it, I created a rectangle with red color. Then I got image data and got all the pixels that this shape has. And then I iterate by each pixel and put it to the canvas. And I got pixels. These are pixels that I get. We can also save image, and to do it, we can use a method data to data URL and get a base 64 format of of file, or we can use a method to blob, and this method get a callback in which we can do manipulations with this blob information. We can also use context WebGL, but that's another theme. And we can use method capture stream and use an RC stream some videos to another device. And we can also use off-screen canvas. It's experimental technology, and it created another thread. And in this thread, we can draw shapes without rendering on the screen. And we can get context bitmap renderer to use it in off-screen canvas. And to optimize canvas, you should render similar primitives or repeating objects on an off-screen canvas if you can do it. We should avoid floating point coordinates and use integers, because floating points coordinates run complicate processes. And don't scale images in draw image. Use multiple layers canvases for complex strings scenes. For example, in the game, we can create 3 canvases: one for background, one for game UI, and one for user UI. And we can also use plain CSS for large background images. For example, to create not canvas for background, but division with background image. And scaling canvas using CSS transforms. We can turn off transparency, and that's the end.
Thank you very much, Oleg. I have some questions to you. First, can you please provide some of the examples where Canvas can be used, some projects, or where we can use it? Applications, maybe?
We can use it in projects where there are many elements, and we should get good performance.
Mm-hmm.
For example, games, or maybe maps, if it's 2D maps or 3D.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have some kind of experience with using Canvas in your either school projects?
In Pixel, I don't remember this project, photo filter, and I use it in a game match game. And I think one more advantage is that a user can't see an image that is drawn on the canvas.
Mm-hmm. How you use it in match game? Where exactly?
For cards that user click and it's rotate and show background of back part of the card.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Maybe someone else has questions.
No questions. Good work.
No questions.
Okay, thank you.
Hello.
Gleb Baikov.
Hi.
Yes, Baikov.
Baikov.
You hear me? Are you hear me?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay.
Sounds good.
Hello, everyone. Second. My presentation about React. What is React? React is a library for building user interfaces. React isn't a framework.
Excuse me, Gleb, maybe you can share the screen.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
My apologize, I forgot it.
That's okay.
You can watch presentation.
No.
It's my first time on Zoom.
Green button, share screen. I don't know, in Russian maybe.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
You can choose screen. Yeah, now something is.
Yes, okay. Okay, React.
Like screen. Yeah. What is React? Perfect.
Okay, React is a library, as I mentioned above. It's not a framework. It's not even exclusive to the web because there are some varieties of React. For example, React Native can be used for making mobile applications. React 360 can be used for building a virtual reality application, and etc. If we speak about the main features of React, they are Virtual DOM, JS6, and in my opinion, component. Virtual DOM. The entire structure of a web page can be represented using DOM, Document Object Model, an organization of HTML elements that we can manipulate, modify, delete, or add new ones. JavaScript is used to interact with DOM. However, when we are trying to manipulate HTML elements from the JavaScript, by the JavaScript, we may experience performance degradation, especially when changing a large number of elements. And operations on elements can take some time that can negative effect on user experience. However, if you were working from JS code with JavaScript object, the operations would be performed faster. And to solve the performance problem, the concept of a virtual DOM just appeared. Virtual DOM is a lightweight copy of regular DOM. It's a distinctive and a distinctive feature of React is that this library works with a virtual DOM, not a regular one. If the applications need to find out some information about the state of the elements, the virtual DOM is accessed. If you need to change the elements of a web page, the changes are first made on virtual DOM, then the new state virtual DOM compared with the current state, and if these states differ, React finds some a minimum number of manipulations that are needed before updating the real DOM to new state. And as a result, this scheme of interaction with the page element works much faster and more efficiently than if you were working directly from JavaScript code with the DOM. Another feature of the React is the JS6. JS6 is a combination of JavaScript and XML code and provides a simple and intuitive way to define visual interface code. React doesn't require using JS6, but most people find it helpful and useful. They can say that it's a visual aid when working with UI inside the JavaScript code. Also, JS6 allows React to show more useful information about warning or errors and etc. Also, it is safe to embed user input in JS6. By default, React DOM escapes any values embedded in JS6 before rendering them. Thus, it ensures that you can never inject anything that's not explicitly written in your application. Everything is converted to a string before being rendered, and it helps to prevent some attack, cross-site script attack. Rendering elements. Elements in React is the smallest building blocks of React apps, and elements describes what you want to see on the screen. Unlike browser DOM elements, React elements are plain objects, and they are cheap to create. React DOM takes care of updating DOM to match the React elements. React elements are immutable. Once you create them, you cannot change the children or attribute, and an element like a single frame in a movie, it represents UI as a starting point of time. And as I said, one more feature of React is a component. Component lets users place the UI into independent, reusable pieces and think about each piece in isolation. Conceptually, components are like JavaScript function. They accept arbitrary inputs called props. and return React elements describing what should appear on the screen. The simple way to define a component is to write JavaScript function. This function is a valid React component because it accepts a single prop object argument with the data and returns a React element. Such components called function components because they are literally JavaScript function. Components can refer to other components in their output. That lets you use the same components abstraction for new level of detail. A button, a form, a dialog, a screen. In React apps, all those are commonly expressed as components. And of course, there are some props of components. Whether you declare a component as a function or as a class, maybe it must never modify its own property. This means that props are read-only. Such function calls pure because they don't attempt to change the input and always return the same result of the same input. But also there are other functions that are called impure because they change their own input. React is pretty flexible, but it has a single strict rule. All React components must act like pure functions with respect to other props. Handling events. Handling events with React elements is very similar to handling events on DOM elements. There are some syntaxes differences. React events are named using camel case rather than lowercase. With JS6, a person can pass a function as the event handler rather than a string. Another difference is that you can return false to prevent default behavior in React. You must call prevent default explicitly. And when using React, you generally don't need to call event listener to a DOM element after it's created. Instead, it just provides a listen when the element is initially rendered. Conditional rendering. In React, you can create a distinct component that encapsulates the behavior you need. Then you can render only some of them, depending on the state of your application. Conditional rendering in React works the same way conditional work in JavaScript. Use React operations or JavaScript operations. Like if you are the condition operator to create elements representing the current state, and let React update the UI to manage them. Here we can create components, displays either of the components depending on whether a user is logged in. This example renders a different rating depending on the value is logged in property option exists. But in some cases we can write this in the other way using line if else with a condition to false. We can hear it. And the last feature of React, in my opinion, is the keys. Keys help React to identify which items have changed, are added, or removed. Keys should be given to the elements inside the array to give elements a stable identity. If all. I know that I not mention all features of React, but we have limited time, and it's all what I want to say.
Thank you very much, Gleb. Could you please say something about state in React components? What do you know about
state?
State.
We have a web page. The page have some state of the elements that are in our period of time. For example, if we on my presentation, the state at this period of time, we have string keys and 2 buttons. And in the state, this state is brought. And if we change something, for example, edit some text or code, the state is modified with these elements.
But what about state and functional components and class components?
Function class. If we write class, I haven't got some visual code. If we write some class, we can after that modify it using, for example, to create objects. And if we use components, as I mentioned, in React, it's like a function in usual JavaScript. We brought some function, and after that, we can use it more and more times.
But can we use state in class components or functional components, or we can use it only in one of those?
From the JS code, from the function or class, we can interact with the state.
But what is the difference between interacting?
I haven't this information because I'm not such a good programmer yet.
Okay. Do you have some experience with React? Maybe you wrote some projects?
No, I haven't got any experience, but I choose this time for the presentation because I mentioned to end with this course, JavaScript frontend, and after that I will study at the React course.
Okay, good. So when you go to this React course, you will know the answer for my question. Yeah, thank you.
Any questions? It's all?
I think
Yeah.
that's all. Yeah, thank you.
I think that that's all. Thank you, Gleb.
Thank you.
Okay, and the next is Alexander Bobrikov.
Bobikov. Hello.
Sorry, Bobikov.
Are you hearing me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, 1 second, please. Are you seeing my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, can I begin?
Yeah, sure.
Hello, my name is Alexander Bobikov, and hello, my name is Alexander Bobikov, and this is a rolling school presentation test. Topic of my presentation is machine learning. We have seen machine learning as a
Sorry, someone who is talking with our speaker.
Okay.
Just a moment, just wait. Maybe you can turn off the mic of this user.
Ya tabii birinci defa batıyor mu adam öyle çok alıştı.
Abi danışmak da değil. Ha, sen burası yadırlansın.
Sen dedin öyle çok alıştı. Danışak.
Danışmak üçüncü defa danışmamız değil. Çiçek danışak sonra da yufa çıktı. Dedi falan vakti danışak görüşey. Görüntülü danışak. Yok o da.
Okay. We have seen machine learning as a buzzword for the past few years. Everyone here probably interacts with machine learning algorithms on a daily basis. Social network news feeds, Netflix recommendation, or just target advertisement system. Machine learning is everywhere. But there are many more examples of machine learning in use. Prediction systems. To compute the probability of a fault, the system will need to classify the available data in groups, face detection and image recognition. Finding patterns in the images have been widely applicable in the surveillance, authorization, and entertainment systems.
Excuse me, Alexander, one moment. Who is the host of this meeting? Could you please turn off mic of this user who speaks with our speaker? Only host has ability to turn off.
У меня есть такая функция.
No, not you. I think, could you please? I think the host can turn off mic.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, because
Правильно,
it's...
шаг в порядке.
Ignore.
Мою спать карта шату.
Can't hear. Just a few minutes. Maybe you can continue. I think host will turn off mic of this user. Sorry. Okay, Alexander, you can continue. We already sent message. This is a thank you.
Prediction systems. To compute the probability of a fault, the system will need to classify the available data in groups. Speech recognition, translation of spoken words into text, finding patterns in speech and music. Most common examples are personal assistants, special needs software, analytics software. Medical diagnosis, finding patterns in gene mutation, what could represent cancer, or just predicting patient diagnostic for doctors to review. Financial industry and training companies use machine learning in fraud investigation and credit checks. And many others. Machine learning is really everywhere. Machine learning algorithms enables the computers to learn from data and even improve themselves without being explicitly programmed. Machine learning involves a computer to recognize patterns by examples rather than programming in with specific rules. These patterns are found within data. Machine learning is about creating algorithms, a set of rules, what learns from complex functions, patterns from data to make prediction on it. According to a way of learning, machine learning mainly includes supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. In supervised learning, an AI system is presented with data which is labeled, which means what each data tagged with correct label. Supervised learning establishes a learning process, compares the predicted result with the actual result of a training data, and continuously adjusts the predictive model until the predicted result of the model reach the expected accuracy. Types of supervised learning. Regression. If you want to predict continuous values, such as trying to predict the cost of a house or the weather outside in degrees, you would use a regression. This type of problem doesn't have a specific value constraint because the value could be any number with no limits. And classification. If you want to predict the discrete values, such as classifying something into categories, you would use classification. A problem like will he make this purchase will have an answer what falls into two specific categories, yes or no. This is also called a binary classification problem. As shown in the above example, we have initially taken some data and marked them as spam or not spam. This labeled data is used by the training supervised model This data is used to train the model. Once it is trained, we can test our model by testing it with some new mails and checked if the model is able to predict the right output. Unsupervised learning algorithm. In unsupervised learning, the IE system is presented with unlabeled and categories data, and the system algorithm acts on the data without prior training. The output is dependent on the coded algorithm. Subjecting a system to unsupervised learning is one way of testing AE. Types of unsupervised learning. A clustering problem is you want to discover the inherent grouping in the data, such as grouping customer by purchasing behavior. Association. An association rule learning algorithm is where you want to discover rules that describe a large portion of your data, such as people that buy Y also tends to buy X. In the above example, we have given some characters to our model, which are ducks and not ducks. In our training data, we don't provide any label to the corresponding data. When supervised model is able to separate both the characters by looking at the type of data and models the underlying structure or distribution in the data in order to learn more about it. And finally, reinforcement learning algorithm. Reinforcement learning requires the use of reward penalty system. The goal is to reward the machine when it learns correctly and to penalize the machine when it learns incorrectly. Reinforcement machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. With a wide range of possibilities answered from the data, the process of the type of learning is an iterative step. It continuously learns. The difference between supervised learning, between this and supervised learning is that it does not require the correct input-output pairs and does not require precise correction of suboptimal behavior. Reinforcement learning is more focused on online planning and requires balance between exploration on the unknown and complex existing knowledge. In the example, we can see that the agent is given two options, path with water and path with fire. A reinforcement algorithm works on a rewarding system. For example, if the agent uses the fire path, then the rewards are subtracted and the agent tries to learn what it should avoid the fire path. If it had chosen the water path or the safe path, then some points would have been added to the reward points. The agent then would try to learn what path is safe and what path it isn't. It is basically leveraging the rewards obtained. The agent improves its environmental knowledges to select the next actions. Examples of reinforcement learnings are self-improving IE in computer games, self-driving cars, and many others. Machine learning is undeniably one of the most influential and powerful technologies in today's world. More importantly, we are far from seeing its full potential. There is no doubt it will continue to be making headlines for the foreseeable future. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Alexander. I have some questions to you. Could you please give some examples where machine learning used?
There are a lot of different services we have seen in past years. Probably you used some of them, face swaps, various photo editors. For example, this background, which can be blue, most our social networking systems. It's machine learning too. Machine finding the patterns in the background and trying to predict what is human and what is background and blur it. And blur background, sorry. Whereas like 40 degrees outside and I am dying a little.
It's okay, don't worry. And one more question, why you choose this topic?
Well, machine learning is really fascinating me for a long time, but I rarely have a lot of time to research in it. Self-improving AI is like my childhood dream. So when I see this topic, I decided to pick it.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting presentation.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for your attention. Goodbye.
Thank you. Who is the next?
Hello. Do you hear me?
Yeah, hear and see. Just a moment, please. Marina, yeah?
Yeah.
I think we will have some time to, so someone from waitlist can present their presentation. If today we have someone who want to present it. We have 2 persons in waitlist. If you're here, please text in chat. Maybe at the end of these presentations, after all of them.
Sorry, could you repeat, please?
So Marina, you can start.
Hello, my name is Marina, and today I want to talk to you about CSS grid layout. CSS grid layout is a CSS model that defines a 2D grid-based layout system optimized for user interface design. What is a grid made of? The grid container is the immediate parent of all grid items. To make an HTML element behave as a grid container, you have to set the display property grid or inline grid to this element. Grid containers consist of grid items placed inside columns and rows. Grid items are direct children of the grid container. Children of grid items aren't children of the grid container. There are a few more terms that are important to understand when working with a grid. Grid lines are invisible vertical and horizontal lines that divide the grid into cells and make up the structure of the grid. Now it's easier. We usually count the columns, the first column, the second, the third, and so on. Grids have 2 addressing. You say where to put the block, and it is based on lines. You can see the first line, second line, third line, fourth line, and usually you see 3 rows in this picture. But in the grids, we must see exactly the lines. The first row is located between first line and second line. The same is true with the columns. And for example, this element can be described as between third and fourth rows and between the second and third columns. A grid track is a space between 2 grid lines. There are also vertical track. The grid cell is the space between 2 adjacent horizontal and 2 adjacent vertical grid lines. And a grid area is a common space surrounded by 4 grid lines. A grid area can be made of any number of grid cells. Let's start by looking at CSS grid layout with a page with 6 boxes. You can see a code example, and we have 1 grid container and 6 items in it. And we also have CSS styles for beauty and clarity. Now it isn't a grid, and it looks like this. To create a grid, we should add display property grid to our grid container. And now we have a single column with grids. However, we will not see a visual difference yet. And let's start to research properties of the grid. First of all, we can set the gap of our cells. We can do it in two ways. We can use usual margins, and in this case, they won't collapse. And we can also use property grid gap, and in turn, grid gap combines two properties. Row gap is the distance between rows, and column gap is the distance between columns. This was used a grid gap. Now we have only one column, but what if we want to, for example, let's add property grid template columns to our grid container. It will look like this. What does the grid template columns mean? This means that this container will have two columns, like this. And if we add one cell, it will look like this. If, for example, we can add third column to our grid container, and it will look like this. The next question is, what does fair mean? Fair is a new form of unit of measure created for grids that allows you to add as many columns as you want without worrying about the specific width of the column. Free space is distributed between columns in proportion to the number of fair. And this notation, this notice means that we are creating 3 columns of the same width. We can change proportions, for example. And now the first column takes up 1/3 of the space, and second column takes up 2/3 of the space. We can also set a fixed value. Moreover, we can mix fixed values and proportions. And in this example, the first column will be stable at 50 pixels, and the rest of the space will be divided between the second and third columns in a ratio of 1:3. And it will look like this. What about the rows? We can also use a grid template for drawing the rows. It means that the first row will take up 1/3 of the space, and the second row will take up 2/3 of the space. In the previous examples, columns and rows were specified explicitly, but they can also be specified implicitly. If you don't specify grid template rows, this means, if necessary, the rows will be added automatically and they will be implicit. The height of implicit rows may be set using the grid auto rows property. In turn, for columns, there is a grid auto columns property that sets the width of the column. And the grid auto flow property allows you to specify what should be used for auto placement of items, row or column. By default, its value is row. Let's look at an example with implicitly adding columns. To do this, we'll set a grid auto flow to column, and also we reduce the number of explicitly defined columns to 2. And what happens? As you can see, the third column was added automatically, and its width is formed based on the content in the widest cell. In turn, the first and second columns have divided the remaining space according to their given proportions. We also can set a width for this column, and it will look like this. We can use the repeat function to declare columns and rows in case of duplicate values. This notice is equal to this notice. Now let's talk about why you should use a grid layout. Usually a responsive layout takes a lot of time. Let's take a look at how responsive is done in grids. This function are a very useful tools when working with CSS grid and creating a responsive layout. Let's see this example. Here we have two column. Oh, sorry, 4 column with 100 pixels width. And here, autofill and autofit will help you create much more dynamic dynamic design. Sorry. Instead of specifying the number of columns and how many times they are repeated, we can simply tell the browser to fit as many columns as possible given the specified width. Autofill is like saying, I'll automatically fill the row with as many columns of the given width as possible. And autofill is used in repeat. How it works? As you can see, each row, this row is filled with as many columns as given they 100 pixels width possible. When there is no space left in the line, the elements go to the next line. This function allows you to specify the minimum and maximum value at the same time. It uses in this way. Autofit behavior in multi-line grids is similar to autofill. The difference shows up in single-line grids. With autofit, empty bars are compressed to 0. They seem to disappear. These tools make our grid responsive. That is, elements in it change their positions in accordance with changing browser window. There are different ways to create grid cells and grid areas. One way is using grid template areas and grid area. Let's look at an example with semantic tags. Let's use grid area to set mix for our blocks. And we'll use grid template areas to define the page template. You just write a template to a grid container using quotes. In this example, we mark header, nav, footer, and other elements. Here we have scattered the elements across our areas. We have created an addressing and assigned addresses to each element. And this is what we get. Our elements are positioned where we told them. We can change the template simply by changing the grid areas in grid template areas. It was, it now. And this is what we get. We can change the arrangement of elements with one line. The blocks are positioned according to our plan, but the best part is that we don't really care how to call the lines. We can even use this option. And it also will be work. Thank you for your attention and try use CSS grid layout.
Thank you, Marina.
Good work.
How often do you use CSS grid in your layouts?
Sorry, could you repeat this?
How often do you use CSS grid in your layouts?
It was my first how to translate my первое знакомство с grid layout, but I want to use it in my next project, English for children.
For kids. Okay, so now you prefer use CSS flags, yeah, to high-fidelity layouts.
But how I read, you should use Flex. You should use both Flexbox and CSS grid layout, and it depends on what you want to make.
Why did you choose this topic?
Because I wanted to discover this topic for me, and I want to use grid template layout.
Thank you.
Thank you for your attention. Goodbye.
Who is the next? Ekaterina, do you know who is the next?
Maybe Natalia. Natalia is next.
Can you hear me or no?
Yes.
Yeah. But you're, I don't know.
Not so good.
Oh,
Well, sound is normal, but your picture is turned. Yeah, so.
I know. I don't have my own laptop. I have borrowed. So
your picture is opposite down.
Yeah.
It's not a bug, it's picture.
Okay. Let's see
You're
your
a real
screen.
programmer. Screen also plays opposite direction.
I hope no.
Let's see.
We can see it. Yeah. Could you please speak a little bit louder because it's, yeah.
Okay, I'll try.
Thank you.
My name is Natasha, and I'm going to tell you about Scrum. Let's start from brief history. The history of Scrum can be traced back to 1986 in the Harvard Business Review article titled "The New Product Development Game" by Hirotaka Takeuchi and Ikujiro Nonaka. This article describes how companies such as Honda, Canon, and Fuji Xerox produce new products worldwide using a scalable and team-based approach to product development. In 1993, Jeff Sutherland and his team at ISO Corporation created the Scrum process to be used in software development processes by combining the concepts of the 1986 article with the concepts of object-oriented development, empirical process control, iterative development, and incremental software processes and productivity improvement, as well as the development of complex and dynamic systems. What's the essence? Scrum is executed in temporary blocks that are short and periodic, called sprints, which usually range from 2 to 4 weeks, which is the term for feedback and reflection. Each sprint is an entity in itself. It provides a complete result, the creation of the final product that must be able to be delivered to the client with the least possible effort when requested. As you can see on this picture, Scrum has 3 roles. First is product owner, the voice of the customer. He or she defines what needs to be done. Second, Scrum Master. He or she is responsible for ensuring the team lives Scrum values and principles and follows the processes and practices that the team agreed they would use. And developers team consists of the people who deliver the product increment inside the sprint. Next, we have events. And the first is sprint. The sprint is a time box of 1 month or less during which the team produces potentially shippable product increment. Typical characteristics of sprint. Maintain a consistent duration throughout the development effort. The new sprint immediately follows the conclusion of the previous sprint, and start that and then data sprint are fixed. Next is sprint planning. The team starts out sprint with a discussion to determine which items from the product backlog they will work on during the sprint. The end result of sprint planning is sprint backlog, about which I'm going to tell you a little bit. Once the team and product owner establish the scope of the sprint as described by the product backlog items, no more items can be added to the sprint backlog. This protects the team from scope changes within that sprint. Daily Scrum. Daily Scrum is a short discussion, usually limited to 15 minutes, where the team coordinates their activities for the following day. Daily Scrum is not intended to be a status report meeting or a problem-solving discussion. Sprint review. At the end of the sprint, the entire team, including product owner, reviews the results of the sprint with stakeholders of the product. Feedback from the sprint review gets placed into the product backlog for future consideration. Sprint retrospective. At the end of the sprint, following the sprint review, the team, including product owner, should reflect upon how things went during the previous sprint and identify adjustments they could make going forward. Next, we have artifacts. And the first is product backlog. The product backlog is an ordered list of the possible changes that could be made to the product. The product owner maintains the product backlog on an ongoing basis, including its content, availability, and ordering. Sprint backlog. The sprint backlog, which has been mentioned a little earlier, is a collection of product backlog items selected for delivery in the sprint. And if the team identifies tasks, the tasks necessary to deliver those product backlog items and achieve the sprint goal. Increment. And the increment is the collection of the product backlog items that meet to the team's definition of done by the end of the sprint. And the definition of done. The definition of done is a team's shared agreement on the criteria that the product backlog item must meet before it is considered done. Working in Scrum, people should adhere to its principles. The following principles underpin the empirical nature of Scrum. Here you can see these principles. First of all, transparency. The team must work on an environment where everyone is aware of what issues other team members are running into. Inspection. Frequent inspection points built into the framework to allow the team an opportunity to reflect on how the process is working. These inspection points include the daily Scrum meeting and the sprint review meeting. And adaptation. The team constantly investigates how things are going and revises those items that do not seem to make sense. These three pillars of Scrum are supported by the following 5 values. Courage. The team operates as a single entity and succeeds or fails together. Focus means the team limits distractions and concentrates on what work needs to be done today. Commitment. The team is self-directed and all members are dedicated to completing work that has been agreed on. Respect. The team is composed of members who have different strengths and each individual's strengths are respected. There is no finger pointing when discussing how to fix what is not working. Openness. The team is given time to gather and share what has been successful and what needs to be improved. What are the benefits of Scrum methodologies? First is easily scalable. This means Scrum processes are iterative and are handled within specific work periods, which makes it easier for the team to focus on definite functionalities for each period. Compliance of expectations. The client establishes their expectations, indicating the value that each requirements of the project brings. The team estimates them, and with this information, the product owner establishes its priorities priority. Flexible changes. Quick reaction to changes in requirements generated by customer needs or market developments. Time to market reduction. The client can start using the most important functionalities of the project before the product is completely ready. High software quality. The working method and the need to obtain a functional version after each iteration helps to obtain a higher quality software. Timely prediction. Using this methodology, we know the average speed of the team with which it is possible to estimate when a certain functionality that is still in the backlog will be available. Reduction of risks. The fact of carrying out the most valuable functionalities in the first place and of knowing the speed with which the team advanced in the project allows to clear risk effectively in advance. Thank you for your time, for your attention.
Thank you, Natalia. I have some questions. First is about sprint duration. Could you please tell, could it be extended, sprint duration, or not?
I think it could. A little. It depends on, I think, team size, amount of items in the backlog.
Okay. What about some disadvantages of Scrum? Is it only about benefits, but maybe there are some disadvantages?
I don't know about them.
Okay, so why you choose this topic?
Mentor said for us, for students, that there are some things that we will face when we will work. So we should look at it closer.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Does anybody has any questions?
I have one question. Is it bird was on your side? I heard some birds. Strange sounds. Okay, anyway. Next. Who is the next?
Hello. One.
Dmitry.
Yes, it's me. Hello.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Please share the screen.
1 second, please. Yeah. What? 10 seconds, please. MacBook. Oh, I need to reload my Zoom for access. 1 second, please. Are you hear me?
Yeah. Can you get it? I make you host. I see it.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful. Okay. Hi, everyone.
You can also turn on your web.
Oh, okay. How I can do it?
Start video. Let us see you.
Yeah. Oh. Right.
Perfect.
Hello. Okay. This. Okay. Hi, everyone. This presentation was prepared for you by Dmitry Rizhenkov. It's me. And today we will talk about Angular. Okay, but what is Angular? Angular is a development platform built on TypeScript. As a platform, Angular includes a component-based framework for building scalable web applications, a collection of well-integration libraries that cover a variety of features, including routing, force management, client-server communications, and more, and a suite of developer tools to help you develop, build, test, and update your code. Also, for a complete understanding of some of features of Angular, in this presentation, we will take a little look at Vue and React. Okay, Angular essentially requires using TypeScript, given that almost of its documentation and learning resource are TypeScript-based. TypeScript is an open source language which is built on JavaScript and of the world's most used tools by adding static type definitions. The main concept of Angular is single-page application. SPA is a web application or website that interacts with the user by dynamically rewriting the current page rather than loading interesting new page from the server. Also, Angular uses IVI. IVI is the code name for Angular Next Generation Compilation and Rendering Pipeline. With the version 9 release of Angular, the new compile and runtime instruction are used by default instance and the older compile and runtime, now as Vue engine. And thanks for IVI, Angular work with DOM is fundamentally different from other frameworks. But first, let's remember what is DOM. DOM defines a standard for accessing documents. The document subject module is a platform and language neutral interface that allow programs and scripts by dynamically access and update the context, structures, and style of a document. But it's very important. Manipulations and edit DOM is a resource-intensive operation. Vue and React use virtual DOM for solve this problem. Virtual DOM or VDOM is a programming concept where an ideal or virtual representation of a UI is kept in memory and sunset with the real DOM by a library. This process is called reconciliation. The term virtual DOM is usually associated with framework elements and their object responsive are used interface. However, virtual DOM. However, Angular uses incremental DOM. What is incremental DOM and what makes the incremental DOM so special? The real benefit of the incremental DOM is it optimized use and memory. This optimization becomes very handy when it's come to device with low memory capacity like mobile phone. Besides, optimization of the memory use is not easy task. Also, the memory used of an application purely depends on the bind size and the memory footprint. Let's see how incremental DOM helps to reduce these two parameters. Incremental DOM is tree-shakeable. Tree-shaking is not a new thing. Is referred to step or remove unwanted code during the build process. Incremental DOM makes the most out of this science and use an instruction-based approach. Incremental DOM compiles each component to set in instruction before the compiles, like you can see this, before the compilation, and this helps the identity the unused instruction, so they can be removed at the virtual DOM is not reshakable since it use and interpret, and there is not way to get now about unused code at the compile time. 1 second, sorry. And number 2, it's reduce memory use. Unlike the virtual DOM, incremental DOM doesn't generate a copy of real DOM, like on a picture, when we render the application UI. Besides, incremental DOM won't allocate any memory if there are not change of the application UI. Most of the time, we re-render the application without any significant modifications. So following this approach can drastically save the device memory. But you might wonder why other frameworks are using it. It's perfect, but not. Also, incremental DOM reduce memory use by following a more efficient method to calculate the difference. That method is more time consuming than virtual DOM. So is a trade-off between speed and memory used when decided between incremental DOM or virtual DOM. Both this DOM have strengths of their own, and we can't say we can just say virtual DOM is better or incremental DOM is better. However, what I can say for sure is that both virtual and incremental DOM are excellent options to have, and they can handle dynamic DOM update without issue. Thanks for your attention. I think I am I have some worry, and I talk so speed my presentation, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dmitry. Could you please say something about event handling in Angular?
Event handling?
Like clicks and some other events. How to handle these events in Angular?
In Angular, you have to use a special component for a big part for working, like browse model and event model and other. I don't use Angular before, but I watched some video and read some books about it, and I know that we can subscribe for other events, and we must use the special model in Angular for beautiful communication as for communication hours models with each other. Angular gives you a lot of special models like готовых решений for this work, but I did not work with Angular like a big in real life. I only started learning it, and in my goal was understanding fundamental difference with other frameworks, for example, like virtual and incremental DOM and other small steps. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Why Angular? Why not?
It's a good question. It's a real good question. Now I'm working with Vue on my job. I have a job. I'm a web programmer, and I understand that we use Vue not right. It's not a good not a good work, not a good architectures, for example, maybe. And I understand that it's not work 10 of 10, not the best of the best. And I understand that my skills like architecture, like software engineer is not working. And I think that Angular, like a framework for big enterprise, like a framework who has a big step to learning порог вхождения. It's helped me to understand and work with good architectures, and it can help me to understand how I must work with big framework in big company. And I hope after 1 month, I will learn in Angular on this course. And it's for my for my experience, I think if I want to work good, Angular for me, but I don't think that React and Vue it's not good. No, it's good frameworks for small maybe web for small website, or maybe for small projects, or if you good understand architecture is, or if you're good software engineer, you have to use it. By I'm not good right now, and I think, okay, I must learn an Angular. I like TypeScript, maybe it's interesting for me. I want to learn it, and I will create presentation about Angular. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
You're studying in Angular.
Thank you. That's
nice
all.
work.
Thank you.
Was it the last presentation?
Mm-hmm. Can I close? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good luck for everyone. Everybody made a good job. For now, I will stop the